Hey guys, welcome back. It's time for another Halloween Horror Nights video. Today I'm going to give my top 5 tips for attending Halloween Horror Nights 2019, and I need something from you guys in return. So a lot of you have asked for a tips video for HHN29, and I do one of these every year, so it is time to give my preliminary tips for this year's event. I say preliminary because I learned my lesson last year. Last year I gave all this advice based on how they'd done Stay and Scream for years and years and years, and then they changed it, and my advice was terrible for everyone trying to go to the event. So I'm gonna give some more general advice in this video, and then in a future video, once the event has started, I'm going to give you some educated advice based on what they're doing for this particular year. So this will be my top 5 tips for attending Halloween Horror Nights 2019 in Orlando. And what I need from you guys is to send me questions for next week's video. So if I don't cover something that you're curious about, leave me a comment down below or send me a message on social media and let me know what you need to know to have the best Halloween Horror Nights experience. As a veteran, as someone who's been going since 2001, sometimes I can take for granted things that I think everyone knows. So if you're new to the event and you have questions, leave them down below. I will answer them next Friday. So without further ado, let's get into these tips. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is Stay and Scream. This is a big topic, especially for people who are new to the event, and it can be very confusing. Stay and Scream has a habit of changing every year, and it had a huge change last year. So I want to talk about the concept of Stay and Scream and how it worked last year. And in a couple weeks, we'll know for sure how Stay and Scream will work for 2019. But here's what we know from the past. So Stay and Scream is an option if you are an annual pass holder to Universal Orlando, or if you have a day ticket to Universal Orlando on the same day that you're attending Halloween Horror Nights. So if you're going that option, you have to have a day ticket and a Halloween Horror Nights ticket for that particular date. However, this year they've also added another option, which is a Stay and Scream pass essentially, which if you're attending Halloween Horror Nights on a particular night, you can add this Stay and Scream option. It's $25 and it gets you into the park at 3 p.m. So it basically gets you access to Universal Studios from 3 to 5 p.m. and then at 5 p.m. you'll go into the holding pens for Stay and Scream. They offered this many years ago. I think back in 2006 I remember purchasing this ticket, and we actually went to Islands of Adventure, and then you were able to hop over to Universal Studios when it got close to time. But this is the first time they've offered something like this in recent years, so it's kind of exciting if you don't want to have to spend your whole day at Universal getting exhausted, walking around, and then do a whole night at Halloween Horror Nights. It could be a good option for you. You're essentially paying for $25 for 2 hours in the park and to have early access to the houses. That ticket is available as an extra, so if you're ordering your tickets online, it's in the add-ons. So once you have access to the park through one of those 3 options, you have to get to the park before 5 p.m. So if you have your day ticket, you want to already be in the park with your Halloween Horror Nights ticket. If you're an annual pass holder, you need to be inside Universal Studios by 5 p.m. You can't be in City Walk. You have to be inside the park by 5 p.m. Once 5 p.m. hits, you'll be ushered into one of the Stay and Scream holding pens. In previous years, we've had 4 holding pens. Last year, there were only 2. We don't know what they're going to do this year, so I can't say for certain. However, I think it is safe to say that we will at least have the Finnegan's holding pen and the Simpsons holding pen, and my fingers are crossed that we're getting Hello Kitty, Diagon Alley, one of those back, because Finnegan's was a madhouse last year, and I think they really need more than 2 holding pens. But you should pick your holding pen based on which houses you want to hit first, which we'll come back to in a moment. But once you get into your holding pen, you will be there for the foreseeable future. So find somewhere comfortable, find a good place to sit and hang out, relax in the Florida heat. it's just a joy. I have only ever done the Finnegan's and Hello Kitty holding areas. I've never done the Simpsons one. Finnegan's, it's real tough to get inside, and with all the crowds recently, it was pretty much a get in, get your drink, and get out situation. It wasn't like you could just chill and hang out in Finnegan's. So the other thing with the Finnegan's holding area last year was that was the holding area that went to Stranger Things. So obviously it was a very popular holding area, and in order to get to be in the front of the holding pen, to be some of the first people to go through the house, people were getting there as early as 4 p.m. Props to you if you were that dedicated, but I will never recommend that, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. So you'll be in those holding pens up until the park is ready to open, and you'll basically have giant gates in front of you, and when it's time, you'll hear the music start playing, the music will switch, you'll see the fog start turning on, and eventually a Universal employee will come, open the gate, and try to take you in an orderly fashion to a house. Keyword there is try. But if you're one of the people watching my videos, I fully expect you to be very respectful of the Universal team members and to go toward the houses in an orderly fashion and not turn it into the running of the bulls, because it happens. So that is Stay and Scream. If I left anything out or you're still confused about anything, let me know down below. The second thing I want to talk about is our house locations, because we now have an official map from Halloween Horror Nights. So with this map, we can start to piece together where these holding areas are going to release to and start figuring out a strategy for the night. Now, in previous years, I knew what houses were going to open first. This year, Universal has made it a little harder to tell. So this is where it gets tricky. If we're going by exactly how they did Stay and Scream last year, then the two houses that Stay and Scream in Finnegan's would be releasing to are Ghostbusters and Stranger Things. It would make sense to have those be the two houses that the holding pen is allowed to choose from, because those are probably the two most popular houses at the event, and last year we had Stranger Things and Poltergeist in those spots. However, I don't know that for certain. Again, I think we'll know more as the event opens. If they do it like last year, the majority of the holding pen went to Stranger Things, but you had the option of going to Poltergeist and just waiting a little bit for it to open. In that case, Ghostbusters would be the first house and Stranger Things would be the second house. For the front of the park, I expect Ghostbusters, Stranger Things to be the first two to open, followed by Us, and then Yeti. Yeti will be the last to open based on last year's opening pattern. For the back of the park, it's a little harder this year because I don't have those start times that I usually use in order to figure out which houses will be the annual pass holder houses, and that's when you can figure out which ones are going to be the Stay and Scream houses in the back. If I'm not mistaken, and anyone out there who is a fellow Horror Nights fan who actually did the Simpsons Stay and Scream last year, I believe the tents open first, followed by the parade buildings, but I cannot say that for certain, and I will share the absolute details for that in 2 weeks once the event has opened. So that part of the strategy really only matters if you're doing Stay and Scream, because Stay and Scream technically opens before the full park does, so there's only certain houses you can go to. If you're doing general admission, you don't really have to worry about that, because by the time they open the gates, the majority of the houses will already be open unless they're having some sort of technical difficulty. So only worry about strategy of which houses will open first if you're doing Stay and Scream. Really, all you have to do is decide which houses are a priority for you. Do you want to cross off Ghostbusters and Stranger Things right at the beginning of the night to try to avoid some waits? Or do you want to hit the back of the park, probably be able to do half of the houses of the event within the first hour because everyone else is going to be at Ghostbusters and Stranger Things? It's an option. If you have multiple nights of the event, I would recommend switching Stay and Scream locations so you can get the most bang for your buck out of hitting as many houses as possible, because really that first hour is your golden opportunity to get as many houses done as possible, and that's the huge advantage of Stay and Scream. If you're doing general admission, my advice will always be to head to the back of the park. Don't go straight for Stranger Things or Ghostbusters, because there's already a huge queue of people that were in Stay and Scream in those lines, and it's probably your best bet to hit the back of the park, get all the tent houses and the parade building houses out of the way, and then return at the very end of the night. I said this last year, but it bears repeating. Ghostbusters and Stranger Things, when I say the end of the night, don't walk into the line 5 minutes before closing, because there is a chance that you will overextend the actors and they might dump the line. I have a feeling they learned their lesson from Stranger Things last year and it won't happen again. I can't imagine they will let that happen again. But just as a piece of advice, when I say the end of the night, I'm talking about the last hour of the event or the last half hour of the event, to make sure that you're going to get to go through the house seeing all the actors, because the actors do have a cutoff point where they are allowed to leave and you might walk through an empty house. So if you're going that route, just keep in mind, don't get in line the second the park is going to close, because it might backfire on you. I'm gonna stop there as far as park strategy, because I know I'm going to go in depth into this once I've had the ability to watch some other people attend the event, go through the park, see how the flow is working this year, and then I'm going to give some solid advice to you guys in that video in 2 weeks, so look out for that. So my third tip for attending Halloween Horror Nights 29 in Orlando is to be prepared. In this case, I mean have ponchos, have umbrellas, wear comfortable shoes, be hydrated, prepare for heat, prepare for humidity. It's a lot, and I always preach this when I talk about Halloween Horror Nights, because if you're not a Floridian, if you're traveling in for the event, then you might not be used to the conditions of Orlando in the middle of September and even October. It is extremely hot during these trips, and it might get nicer at the end of October. Sometimes we luck out, but in general, September is brutal, and the event starts a week earlier this year, so it's going to be even more brutal during that week. It is just a rough time. So I want to give some blunt advice about Halloween Horror Nights when it comes to making the most out of your night and being prepared for all the different conditions that can face you at this event. So the first one is be prepared for rain. It's Florida, it rains a lot, and it rains out of the blue, especially in the middle of the night in September and sometimes October as well. So I highly recommend either having a poncho, having an umbrella, probably not an umbrella, it's not that great in the crowd. So I would recommend mostly a poncho or a rain jacket, and just know that it can happen. It happens every single year. I have not made it out of Halloween Horror Nights unscathed, I don't think, in any trip. I've always had to pull out my poncho or my rain jacket at least once on the trip. Some years have been really bad. If you're prepared, you'll have a good time regardless. And just know that if it does rain, the scare zones do shut down, so your only option will be houses or shows. And I don't know if they'll do the Lagoon show when it's raining. Don't know about that one. The next thing you need is comfortable shoes. We do so much walking at Halloween Horror Nights, and when we do our 5-night in a row trip, it is brutal. We end up walking 10 miles per night, and that's just at Halloween Horror Nights. That's not including anything we do during the day. That is just from the time we're in the park. You do so much more walking than you do on a normal theme park day, because you're taking all these crazy routes backstage in order to get to the queues or into these crazy buildings that you would never go to on a general park day. So in particular last year, the 2 parade buildings had this gauntlet of a queue. I mean, Seeds of Extinction was my favorite house of the event last year, and it was a labor of love to get back there, because that was the longest walk to a queue and the longest walk out of a queue, and you had to do the exact same walk pretty much if you wanted to do trick or treat. So it was brutal. It was a lot. Then when you get to the house, you're walking through the house too. So you are standing or walking pretty much the entire night, unless you sit to get food or sit to watch a show. So I don't want to sugarcoat this. It is a lot. So I call my workouts during the summer my HHN conditioning, because it really does take a lot out of you, especially if you're doing it 5 nights in a row like we do. By the 5th day, you've walked 50 miles and your feet are telling you about it. So prepare yourself, get ready, and wear comfortable shoes. With that, also prepare for crowds. If you're someone that is nervous about being around huge groups of people, this might not be the event for you, or you might just need to get in a great mental space before you go, because it's just getting busier and busier and busier, and it can be really tough. And it doesn't help that people are drinking or they're teenagers, and there's all these factors that go into it. So just want to put it out there. The crowds are intense. The other major thing that people from outside of Florida don't realize is that it might be fall, but it is super, super, super humid. It actually gets warmer as the night goes on at Halloween Horror Nights. Usually around sunset, you'll get a little bit of a break. As soon as the sun goes down, you're like, oh, I can breathe. A nice little breeze comes in. You get a momentary cool down. And then as soon as the sun sets, typically it gets very still and the humidity starts to rise. So usually by 1 a.m., midnight, when you're finishing the event, we're close to 100% humidity on the nights that we're there in September. Just know you're gonna sweat a lot, which means you need to hydrate a lot. If they're doing the freestyle drinks this year, I highly recommend getting a freestyle cup and making sure to continue to hydrate on Gatorade or whatever your beverage of choice is. But just know that it can take a lot out of you and you can end up sick if you don't take care of yourself. So hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Okay, so that was the Mama Liz portion. A lot of my friends call me Mama Liz. So that was my Mama Liz portion of the video. I'm going to move on to number 4. Number 4 is take a food tour during Halloween Horror Nights. So obviously you guys know you have to visit the houses, you have to visit the scare zones, but this year especially, I think the food is part of the destination as well. Everyone knows about the glory of pizza fries, and this year we're getting s'mores fries, and we found out with the map that we are getting the Star Court food court. Very excited as a Stranger Things fan. That's gonna go in the New York Plaza area over by Transformers, which will also have a huge themed bar. But we're just starting to get information about what's going to be available at the food court. And of course, there's going to be Scoops Ahoy. So Stranger Things fans, rejoice. The pizza fries are typically over by the SpongeBob SquarePants store that's near ET, but last year they also sold them at Louie's, which is the pizza place over in New York. Someone just posted today that the Twisted Taters are over by Men in Black this year, so if you're interested in Twisted Taters, that's where you'll find them. And then there's food booths throughout the park selling little specialty items and turkey legs and all sorts of strange oddities that they bring out for Halloween Horror Nights. So very interested to see what all food we get. But we got a Starcourt Mall, we got Scoops Ahoy, we got pizza fries. What else do you need? If you're famished and the snack carts aren't going to do it, most of the restaurants are available during the event. And I would recommend doing one of the quick service ones because you don't want to waste too much time getting your food. So for that, you have the Today Cafe. I'm excited to try it. Haven't tried it yet. Universal Studios Classic Monsters Cafe. We have Louie's, which is the pizza place I mentioned over in New York. Richter Burgers in San Fran. Fast Food Boulevard, which is in Simpsons, which is a great option because they have so many different things in there. And then also Mel's Dine-In over in Hollywood. So there's plenty of restaurants open. They do get very busy just because of how many people are in the park and no one's leaving the park to go eat. So they do get busy, but it's never really been an issue to find seating and be able to eat. So there are plenty of places to eat during the event. Along those lines, the majority of the rides are open as well. According to the map, we have Rip Ride Rockit, Transformers, Revenge of the Mummy, Escape from Gringotts, Men in Black, and the Simpsons ride. So no Jimmy Fallon, no E.T., but that's because those rides have their queues used for houses. That said, I do not recommend using your time at Halloween Horror Nights to ride rides that you could ride during the day, because with 10 houses, it's going to be tough to see everything in one night. And unless you're there for a long time, I would not use your time at Halloween Horror Nights riding rides. So number 5 is leave time for scare zones and shows. If you've been around my channel for any length of time, you know that I love camping in scare zones. If you want to see some of my videos from the scare zones, click here. I find great joy just kind of finding a bench or finding a spot to stand in the scare zone, watching the actors do what they do best, which is scare people. And it's so much fun to watch other people get scared. It's just a blast. So I highly recommend saving some time to spend in each scare zone, get to watch the actors work, and hopefully get some good laughs out of watching other people get scared. Then there will also be the 2 shows this year. So we've got Academy of Villains in the back, and we've got the Marathon of Mayhem Lagoon show right in the center of the park. And those can both be great tools if your feet are feeling those crazy long queues and all the walking you're doing during the event. The shows are a good break and breather and allow yourself to recover while watching a show. I am a go, go, go person, so I personally will not follow this advice. I am terrible at sitting and watching shows because I want to spend every chance I get with the spoopy people. On the flip side, I will find a scare zone and find a bench and chill in a scare zone watching scare actors. So that's my downtime. If you find in the middle of the night that the lines for houses are just out of control, my advice would be to find a show, find a scare zone to chill in, or take a break to eat some food and let the lines die down a little bit, because there is a period right in the middle of the night where all the houses are at their peak and it does get insane. It's better use of your time to enjoy some other aspect of the event and come back to the houses once that crazy time has died down. And the last thing is, don't forget to stop by the Halloween Horror Nights store on your way out to get all your souvenirs for the event, like this one, which is one of my favorite shirts from Halloween Horror Nights 25. They do have a dedicated Halloween Horror Nights store, but then also the massive store right at the front of the park has all your Halloween Horror Nights goodies as well. So if you forget to check out the Halloween Horror Nights store, there is the main gift store right as you exit that will have almost all the items that you can find at the other store as well. And that way, if you forgot, it's a last minute thing, you still have access to it. So don't forget your souvenirs. Okay guys, so that was it. That is my top 5 tips for attending Halloween Horror Nights 29 at Universal Orlando. I hope that was helpful for some of you who are new to the event and aren't quite sure what to expect. And I hope some of those tips can help you plan for your upcoming trip, because it is right around the corner. So like I said at the beginning of the video, make sure to leave me comments down below with any questions you have about the event that I did not cover in this video. I would be happy to help you guys plan your trips, be the most prepared for your first trip or your 15th trip, however it may be, but you're probably good by that point. If you've been going for as long as I have, I think you're probably good, but I'm always happy to help make your experience the best it can be at my favorite event of the year. I'll be back next week to answer all of those questions, and I will see you guys then. Bye.